Welcome to our Life Design After Divorce webinar. And thank you so much for being here. And we would just like to take a quick moment and introduce ourselves. My husband, Jeff, he's an attorney and I'm a violinist. And together we are the Teicherts. And with Love in Later Years, also known as Lily, we produce a new podcast, video, and Lily letter every week. By raise of hands, how many of you listen to the podcast? And you can do a raise of hands on your Zoom too. Okay, and then how many of you listen to or watch the YouTube channel, LilyTube? Podcast is LilyPod, and the videos are on LilyTube. And then how many of you read the Lily letter? Okay, I don't have, I see some hands. Cool. All right. And feel free to put any notes in the chat if you want to let us know your status on that. We are former mid-singles, for those of you who don't know, and we've been through divorce ourselves, and we wanted tools and we wanted support, and we didn't know how to find it. And it really didn't exist for us, especially for Latter-day Saints who are divorced. And so that's why we started Love in Later Years, to be able to support those who have loved and lost and experienced the heartbreak of divorce. And we had to figure out how to heal from that. And we did it largely on our own, with the support of a few friends, but nothing like really official.
Right. I mean, I actually went looking for books and things. There's got to be a book written by a Latter-day Saint author about adjusting to divorced and single life and all that. But really, we couldn't find anything.
Yeah, so that's why we started Love in Later Years, and that's why we created this webinar, and we're so excited to connect with you. It's the first time we've ever done one, so we're glad you're here. And with decades of experience with the process, we are turning our messes, what we felt were messes, into passionate messages of hope and healing. Maybe you could talk a little bit about our identity as a couple, like we talked about yesterday.
Well, our identity at Love in Later Years is we're practical idealists, I guess would be the best way to describe it. We're practical because we discuss the nitty-gritty stuff that we don't want this to be another exercise in Latter-day Saint idealism. Most divorcees are kind of done with that. But we deal with, okay, how do you deal with celibacy in your middle years? How do you deal with, an ex-spouse that you have really hateful feelings toward? I mean, there's all kinds of things like that. And we take it all on. We discuss it. How are we idealists? We talk a lot about how we have the potential together to become kings and queens. And we believe in that. We believe in a love that you can build with your partner that will last to eternity. And we don't think that that hope and that dream is exhausted because you got divorced. We believe in a God of second chances who wants to exalt you. And so that is the way in which we are idealistic.
Yes, so practical idealism, where we will meet any issue where, for what it is, and we'll also offer a healthy degree of hope and positivity.
Right.
So let's see. Just a quick give you the lay of the land, the plan for tonight. For about an hour, we're going to be maybe about 45 minutes of like really structured content. We're going to be giving you as much value, massive value as possible. We're just going to give you as much good information as possible that you can take away. And like most webinars, you're probably thinking there's going to be some kind of a sales pitch, and there will be for about 5 minutes at the end. We're not going to talk about it throughout. You're just going to be able to enjoy good content and then stick around for 5 minutes and let us give you an announcement that no one else knows. So you're going to have like the secret first. It's something we've been working on for a long time.
Yeah, this is not a hide the ball infomercial like you've seen where people get on and say, okay, we're going to tell you why you're not losing weight. And by the way, the medical profession doesn't want you to know this. And you know how you've seen it. We'll have a few minutes at the end where we'll present something for you, but we intend to make this totally worth your while, more than worth your while, whether or not you accept our offer on that. So
Right.
We're glad you're here, and we hope that you benefit greatly from this.
And we encourage you to be an active learner, to take notes and to write down any questions you might have that come up. It might get answered throughout, but at least at the end, if it doesn't get answered, you can ask it at the end. And we're willing to stay a little longer if we need to for the needs of our audience. So just know that we're here, and for about the last 30 minutes, we'll do a Q&A and we'll get you guys off mute. Okay.
All right. Well, let's dive right in then. The first area that we promised to talk to you about is banish fear from running your life. Now, can anybody tell me, put it in the chat or say it out loud, what is the most important thing they've learned from their divorce?
We don't see any chat messages yet.
Yeah, but you're welcome to unmute your mic and tell us.
Actually, we can't. They're not able to.
Okay, how to be happy being myself. Fair enough. Any other thoughts? Who I am. Okay, that's another important one. I think a lot of our people have been doing some work. Anything else? So a very common one that we hear, I mean, all the time, is to not ignore red flags. And what that tells us is essentially, I married a jerk. I could have had a great relationship until my spouse came along and messed it all up. And that's a very tempting conclusion to come to in the beginning. But as a couple of you alluded to, it's important for us to work on our own selves. Now, why do we have fear? Where does it come from? Contrary to popular opinion, looking for red flags is not the most important task in pairing up with a new partner. Figuring out whether you're marrying the same kind of person again and all that is not the most important part. That's not the answer to your problem. Because first we need to understand trauma. Now, most people think of trauma as being a thing that we go through if we're in a serious car accident, or if you're in the military and you see a friend shot right next to you or something. That is trauma. That will give you PTSD, no question about it. But what we're really talking about in a lot of I mean, there's major trauma in some marriages, but we want to talk a little bit about micro traumas. Now, that could be anytime your spouse is in the kitchen, you come home from work, whatever, you go and try to give him or her a kiss, and they turn their head and grimace a little bit. And all right, if that happens once or twice, maybe you shrug it off and think she's protecting her makeup or something like that. But if it happens over and over and over again for years, those little traumas, those little abuses can build up to a very significant case of trauma. And you know, if I had that going on in another marriage and then Kathy does that to me just to protect her lipstick one day, I might react within myself as though she was rejecting me, even if that was not at all her intention. So when we see red flags as mid-singles, it's not so much, I mean, I've heard a lot of people talk about we need to be able to recognize red flags and not ignore them. And that is probably a really good message to people in their 20s who are getting married for the first time. Yeah, keep both eyes wide open. 90% of the red flags we mid-singles see are not real. They're cognitive distortions. And so how are we going to figure out what's real and what's not real? How can we figure out what is just something that got triggered in us that doesn't mean anything, or something that we really should pay attention to? We've got various ideas about that, but the main one I want to offer you right now is we need to get to a place of peace. And when we're in a place of peace, we're going to see more clearly than when we are disrupted. We call that peace, we like to call that peace shalom, which is the Hebrew word that means peace, but it means really more than that. It's a bigger word than just peace. It is wholeness. It is restoration. It's all of that. So when we are at peace, we will feel that being restored to us after we've been disrupted. And it's important to come to recognize, am I in shalom or not? Am I at peace or am I disrupted? If you're disrupted, don't make any important relationship decisions at that time. You know why? Because your brain is lying to you. It's trying to protect you, but it's 2 million years old, and it is trying to defend you from a dangerous situation. And it bases its judgments on what situations might be dangerous on a lot of over-inclusive data, things that have happened to you in the past that may not even be issues now. So only make relationship decisions when you feel at peace. Now, that doesn't mean you're not going to break off a relationship. You very well might.
So if you feel a sense of urgency and
Right.
you feel
Gotta
like
do
you,
this now.
yes, that's probably not the time. It's going to be a peaceful and it's a decision that you make that is intentional and not based on the emotions, big emotions of the moment.
Right. When you're at peace, you're more likely to see the world clearly than when you're disrupted. So learn to tell the difference between the two. And that means being intentional and conscious of, how am I feeling right now? Am I at peace? All right, if I am, this is a good time to think about things. If not, maybe what I need to do is work on some self-care and get myself to a better emotional state. I want to also point out that a number of times in my mid-single journey, I had women break up with me without giving a reason, without talking to me about it, without any precipitating event. They just call or text and say, I don't think this is working out. Well, what happened? And then you get nothing, or you even ask verbally and there's no explanation. I can't speak for the people who did that, but I saw it enough to think there was something going on. And I think that one of the things that is likely going on is they got triggered by something that was not necessarily even really dangerous, but they got scared, got triggered, and pulled the trigger on it before really giving it a chance to, to make a more thoughtful decision. I mentioned before that trauma leads to cognitive distortions, and those are things we tell ourselves or that our brain tells us that are not really true. And I've often told a story about Kathy, I won't tell it again, but where she canceled a breakfast that we had planned on, and I immediately took it as rejection. This is back when we were first dating, and I came to my senses, thankfully, before I acted on that and broke up with her. But my my problem at that time was I'd been used to rejection in a former marriage that lasted a long time. And so, that little hint of rejection that I was feeling by misinterpreting her intentions was really triggering me and causing me to feel emotionally flooded. And we want to be cognizant of the fact that not all of our thoughts are real, and not all of them indicate truth. And so that's an important principle to understand, is your brain's going to lie to you sometimes. Don't just think that every feeling you have is the Holy Spirit. Don't think that every thought you have is revealing some kind of truth to you. Second guess yourself once in a while.
So there is something I'd like to say about this subject before we move to the next
Keep going.
point. So we recently talked on, so we've been guests, I believe, 4 times on the Flameless Fireside podcast. I don't know how many of you are familiar with that, but it's just a fun conversation. And we talked quite a bit about rejection and how it's along for the single ride. And really from the time that we first started liking the opposite sex, rejection has been part of our path. And we may have been married for a long time and didn't experience that, or maybe we did even in our marriage. But that rejection is something we all have to deal with. And I think that's the thing that's most fear-based for people not wanting to date again.
And you may have experienced rejection in a prior relationship.
And you're probably not going to avoid it altogether in life, even if you try to avoid relationships. So the one thing I would very much encourage you to do is make sure you're accepting you. Because if you accept you and you know that God accepts you and you really feel that, it really makes any rejection on someone else's part a lot less of a trial for you.
I think one way that we do what Kathy just talked about is to consider alternative interpretations of events when something happens and we're feeling flooded. What if we adopted a different interpretation that was maybe a little more empowering? What would that story look like? We can face our fears as well, like a child turning on the bedroom light and making sure there's no monster under the bed. Sometimes that means going and asking a question of a dating partner, of an ex-spouse, of someone who may have information that's valuable to you about yourself or where things went wrong, and just getting that monster out from under the bed. And sometimes we're really afraid of it. Another time that surfaces is if I want to ask a girl for a date, but I'm really pretty worried that I might get rejected because I think she's out of my league or whatever. It's really helpful if we just bite the bullet and do it. And I'm going to tell you, you're never going to have the fear completely go away. It's always along for the ride, but it's your choice whether you put it in the driver's seat.
Right. And that's why we call this point, this first part of our 6-part presentation tonight, banish fear from running your life. It's not going to be banishing fear from your life, but from running it. It's not in the driver's seat.
Right. Here's another example, of confronting your fear rather than running from it. Tell the truth about yourself. Dr. Greg Bears talked about that a lot, but telling even the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I've said lots of times, I told Kathy on our very first date that I had just been laid off from my corporate job and divorced for the second time. And by the way, I was couch surfing with my parents and unemployed. And I told her that so that she could make choices about, maybe something could happen between us.
Which I really appreciated, because I had been in relationships in the past where they weren't that forthright, and I made choices based on irrelevant information. And that was not cool. That was just not cool. And being truthful actually connects you. It makes you connect better with people. And it is respectful to people who need to be able to make choices on truth.
Right. And she is here with me today, 7 years after that event. And so but when she could accept me, knowing what I had just told her, then I could really feel accepted, right? I could feel loved because I told her the truth and it didn't knock her off my path. Now, what if it had? Well, if she had said, yeah, I don't have time for you, sorry. Well, okay, we both probably did what was right for us if that was the situation, because if I have to lie or even, stretch the truth or color it a little bit in order to get somebody to like me, then they're falling in love with the mask I'm wearing and not the real me. So part of it is taking out that flashlight or turning on the light and looking under the bed and making sure there's no monster there, and figuring that out, and your fears will flee at that moment.
So the first 3 chapters of Intentional Courtship are all about overcoming fear. And the first 8 chapters are really all about recovering from relationship loss. So I just wanted to mention that before we move into the next section, which is to thrive beyond your divorce challenges.
Let me give a quote that kind of, I think, transitions these 2 subjects. Pema Chodron, I don't know how many of you know who she is. She's a Buddhist nun and very insightful person, but she said, without realizing it, we continually shield ourselves from pain because it scares us. We put up protective walls made of opinions, prejudices, and strategies, barriers that are built on a deep fear of being hurt. Pause the quote for a second. That is rampant in the Latter-day Saint mid-singles community. We're dealing with a lot of people who have been hurt, who have trauma, who get triggered, who are emotionally flooded from time to time. And you know what? Nobody blames you. We were the same. And sometimes we still are the same. So, but we build these walls to keep from being hurt. Strategies. How many people do you know who have ever gotten into a friendship with someone because they didn't really want to admit that they would like to date them? Friendship seemed like a way to try to find love without risk, which of course never works. But we try these strategies, we hide behind them to hide who we really are because we're a little afraid that we're not really acceptable as we are, and that nobody could love us if they really knew the truth. So tell the truth about yourself, and not everyone will accept you, but enough people will that you're going to understand that you're a lot more lovable than you think. All right, so picking up the quote again, these walls are further fortified by emotions of all kinds: anger, craving, indifference, jealousy and envy, arrogance and pride. But fortunately for us, the soft spot, our innate ability to love and to care about things, is like a crack in these walls. It's a natural opening in the barriers we create when we're afraid. With practice, we can learn to find this opening. We can learn to seize that vulnerable moment. And we'll talk about vulnerability later, but we can learn to seize that vulnerable moment: love, gratitude, loneliness, embarrassment, inadequacy. If we can let people know, yeah, I'm kind of embarrassed right now, or I'm feeling kind of inadequate. I mean, I'm not suggesting you go out and just accentuate the negative. That's not the point. The point is, let people know who the real you is. And then when they offer you acceptance, it's going to be real, and you're going to believe it. All right, Kathy, go ahead.
Well, moving into thriving beyond divorce challenges, that's our second of 6 points we're making tonight. And I was listening to a podcast today, and one of I believe it was Jennifer Finlayson Fife, and she said one of her favorite books is Falling Upward by Richard Rohr. I haven't read it myself, but I understood the concept and it really resonated with me. And it says the idea, well, it doesn't say this, sorry, this is not a quote. This is my thoughts about this concept. The idea that our life falls apart, that as we lose all control, that is our crisis in life peaks, like with divorce, as we fall, we ironically grow into better versions of ourselves. I mean, not automatically, it does require intentional effort, but that really
You
is,
can become bitter or, just
Oh, yeah.
jaded and cynical.
there are other options, but there really is a gift in the crisis. And we can help you, like we help our clients as coaches, we help you harness the gift for your betterment, the gift of crisis. Now, we're not saying to look at your divorce with, rose-colored glasses and think that it was all fine and good and, be really grateful for that trial. But we can look for the gift in it of development and that idea of falling upward. It's really kind of a beautiful concept that as we fall, we rise.
Yeah. And I mean, we don't always know at a certain moment. I mean, I think when Joseph had been sold into Egypt as a slave and then went to prison, it would be hard to look at that situation and think, I'm falling upward, until the Pharaoh elevated him to be prime minister of the country and he saved a nation and his family. And, the story. But God knows the end from the beginning and we don't. And sometimes we've got to trust that when it's really hard to trust it. You lose your job like I did in Texas. Well, it's hard to believe that God is blessing you, even though my career is in a much better place now because that happened. Getting divorced for the second time, you think, am I just incapable of having a good marriage? And without that divorce, I wouldn't have this beautiful woman sitting next to me as my companion. And so there's so many things that, that we can expect and hope for in the future, that all of the things we've lost will be restored in one way or another. But it's hard to see that in the moment, but we need to try to see it. We need to try to imagine it.
Right. And think of yourself like a bamboo plant, which I believe they grow. I mean, I'm not an expert at this, but I think we've all heard that they grow very slowly until they just shoot up. And I think that personal development is much that way. We keep chipping away at that personal work, and eventually we just morph into this beautiful, wonderful, amazing person we didn't even know was in there.
Right.
But that gift of crisis brought it out in us.
One of the things that I have observed, and I think Kathy has also, in the many years we were in the mid-singles community, and even since then, as we've worked with the mid-singles community, is this kind of deep sadness, this deep disappointment that so many feel about the way their life has turned out. But it's not turned out yet because you're not dead. There's so many things that can happen and so much hope you can still believe in.
Well, and something I'd actually like to clarify is that love in later years is for anyone beyond the possibility of a first marriage in their 20s. So that's anyone who's divorced, anyone who's widowed, and anyone who's not yet married and over 30 and would like to be. Right. Anyone, like at any age, like that's who we serve. There is no age limit. It's really, everything kind of gets complicated after that.
I said that to a couple of not yet ever married mid-singles just the other day. I said, you've lost your fairy tale too, because I mean, a divorced person, they had their Prince Charming or their Cinderella or whoever, and losing that was very painful. But some have never had a chance to even have that at all yet, and wonder if it's even possible. And a lot of dreams get shattered that way.
Yeah, I do think we have the most experience with divorce, though, and that's why we're doing this webinar, because it's something we really can relate with you very intimately about. And I actually forgot something really important. When we introduced ourselves earlier, we mentioned, the podcast, the videos, and the Lily letter each week, but we also, and besides writing Intentional Courtship, we also are advanced certified life coaches. We've done a lot of training and we've had a lot of clients, and we love working with people personally. Jeff has a Knights of the Lily group for men, and I have a Lily Ladies group for women. And then we also do private coaching. And so if that's something you are interested in, we do free discovery calls for anyone who hasn't coached with us before. So you're welcome
Those
to do
are
that.
those groups that Kathy mentioned are places you can come and tell the truth about yourself and watch whether other people are supportive and accepting or not.
And I would say thriving with beyond divorce is kind of a big point of it, right? I mean,
Right.
thriving in your life, no matter what you're dealing with personally.
Now, in terms of this deep disappointment that we feel, sometimes we talk about the church and how we didn't get enough support in our religious community. And it, there may be a lot of validity to that. How much control do you really have over what people in your ward think about your divorce? Very little, right? What if my former spouse is poisoning the well with the kids and telling them what a dirtbag I am? How much control do I have over that? And there's the judgment of others. And at the end of the day, with all of these kinds of things, they go around the central issues, but they're not really what matters. Ultimately, what we have to do is radical acceptance of what is. All right, I may not have wanted my marriage to break up, but guess what? It did. And I don't have to, continue to say, well, it wasn't meant to be that way, was it? My eternal family wasn't meant to break up. The plan of God has been thwarted in some way. Your marriage was meant to break up. You know how you know that? Because it did. And that,
well, and whether
that
that
is your
works
path.
or not, that, is kind of maybe a religious question that you have
And
to
it's
ask
a moot
yourself.
point
But,
at this stage.
well, yeah, it's really more of Loving What Is by Byron Katie. Have you guys heard of that? It's the idea that when you fight against reality, you only lose 100% of the time. And radical acceptance is probably the number one thing that would have saved Jeff and I a whole lot of pain and heartache that we didn't have to go through. Like, we will have pain. Divorce will always bring some pain, but it got really dirty. Like, it wasn't clean pain once when we were fighting against the reality of it, when we couldn't believe it had happened, when we kept telling ourselves story after story after story about why it shouldn't have happened or why our spouse shouldn't have made certain choices. It's like, it just was exhausting.
You know how when you go to the gym and you lift or you run on the treadmill or whatever you do and you get sore? Okay, that is clean pain. If you get an injury, that's dirty pain. And the dirty pain comes from the judgments we put on it.
And not radically accepting what has happened.
Yeah, I have a 24-year-old son that got killed in a rock climbing accident just like, not even 6 months ago. I guarantee you there's nobody that's not an inhuman monster that's going to go through that and not shed some tears and not feel sad. And no matter what thought work they do, they're going to feel the pain. Where does the pain get worse? Where do you get stuck? You get stuck in saying he was too young to die. You get stuck in saying, yeah, this wasn't meant to be like this. We're not supposed to bury our children.
And those were natural thoughts that came up when he
Absolutely.
first died. I mean, that is just the way of it. I think our humans' minds just work that way.
Right. I mean, another thought that I had, which I've since tried to dispense with, but is I've been through 2 divorces and the loss of a little brother to cancer. When's it going to stop? Why me? Well, how come I've had so many losses and so much pain? I see other people that don't seem to have nearly as much as I have. Well, that's a painful thought, right? That judgment that I lay on it makes the pain bigger and it makes it last longer. I'm going to tell you guys, be very honest about it. I was in deep depression for probably 4.5 years. After, within a 2-year period, I lost my wife, my kids for a good portion of the year, my home, my business. I mean, my political career that I sort of had going at that point. I mean, I lost all of that, everything that Job lost within a couple of years, except for my health. And thank heavens I didn't lose that. But I lost a lot. And I kept having these thoughts and I nurtured them, which didn't help me. Oh, how can I start all over again? This is what took me, 15, 20 years to build is all gone. How do I know that if I start over and I, rebuild, that it won't just happen again? All of these judgments that I placed on it. And that kept me in pain for a long time. And
I did the fighting against reality thing too. And it kept me in pain for a long time.
Right. And so, I mean, I think that's another important thing, is to check where our thoughts are. For thriving beyond divorce challenges, our thoughts matter a lot. Now, 3 other concerns, which I think are more at the core of this, if we're really honest, than just sort of the deep disappointment about how things have worked out, are loneliness, aloneness, and celibacy. Loneliness is, man, I put everything into this marriage for 20 years or whatever it was. And now I'm looking at separating from this person and being alone. And I feel really sad, really lonely in that situation. And I felt that way, even when things weren't really great between me and my former wife toward the end. If I would hear her or sense her come into the house, somehow it comforted me, even though she wasn't that great to me when she was there. But I was so used to having her around that not having her around for a while felt like having part of me amputated. And so that's the loneliness. Aloneness is different, but it's related.
I call it overwhelm.
Yeah, why don't you explain that part?
Okay, you know how, well, I don't know how many of you can relate. I hope all of you know what I'm talking about. Just like when you first get divorced and you feel like a deer in the headlights, you are just in shock and you have no idea what to do and you're scared and you want to go running away.
You may not trust your own judgment about how to take care of yourself after you don't have your spouse.
And I think the aloneness comes from just feeling the weight of becoming a single parent, the weight of completely revamping your life, the weight of change that is bigger than most people have to experience if they don't go through a divorce. It's a huge, huge change.
And why don't you explain what you did to cope with that and what you created that helped you be more ready to be married again?
So, well, I because I'm a violin teacher, I increased my studio from what was full at 5 students to about 35 over a year's time. I refinanced my
Took
house.
care of income.
Yep, I refinanced my house and took over the payment, and I gratefully was able to figure out an arrangement where I could work part-time and then be a part-time mom, and then they were with their dad half the time. And I think it helped a lot for me to have that balance, but then I had to deal with the former. So it's, pros, cons, if you have a parent involved or not. It's, there's some good things about it and some not so good things. But gratefully he's a good dad and he wanted to be involved. And so we shared custody and we made it work. I made it work, and I didn't always take as good a care of myself as I really needed to. And it caused some problems for my health, and we'll talk about self-care later as we move through the rest of the points fairly quickly, since we're already like, I think, I don't know, we've got maybe 15 minutes left.
Yeah, if I could just touch,
or at least of this portion.
If I could just touch on celibacy. Okay, now let's be real honest. For most of us, going from being intimate regularly with our spouses to nothing and not knowing when we might have that gift again, that was a big hardship for a lot of us. I mean, and if we're trying to live the law of chastity and keep our temple recommend and all of that,
And not just get married right away to have sex, which is not recommendable.
I mean, it's a fundamental longing. You're a sexual being. And I think too, that for a lot of people, I say men in particular, but women as well, when that part of your life is kind of put on ice, it increases the loneliness you feel, I mean, and just going to bed next to Kathy every night, the warmth and just feeling that other person right beside me, whether there's sex or not, that feels so comforting. And I think that's a big adjustment for a lot of people when they get divorced is, okay, I'm sleeping alone and I hate going to bed this way.
And feel free to share in the comments if you relate with
any of that.
Yeah, with the loneliness or the overwhelm or the celibacy issues with divorce.
Yeah.
So
there's that. All right, what should we do about these things? Radical acceptance. You want to talk about turning poison into love?
Well, it's a story I've told on the podcast. Basically, I had a dating partner tell me that plants are smart, trees are smart. They know how to literally take poison, like when we give fertilizer and all the stuff that we put on the plants, they take it and they turn it into life. And it's funny because I decided to commit to this particular dating partner. I didn't commit very often. And then it kind of fizzled. It just fizzled. And I was tempted to do all the dirty pain about it. But instead I went and picked a leaf off of a tree and I dried it. And it was my reminder that I could take poison and turn it into life and love and just let it be. And there's been a few other times like that where I was tempted to get into dirty pain and all the questioning, and then I was able to just let it go instead. And it was really empowering to realize that I didn't have to create all the drama around it.
Right. And the judgments are what creates the drama. Often people who say, I hate drama are the ones that cause the most of it, but that's a whole other subject.
When someone is mentioning that they deal with sleeping by themselves and how that can be rough, and I know I dated someone who said that for years they weren't able to sleep, and they never were able to sleep alone, I think, in all the years they were single. I personally got used to taking over the bed eventually, but at first it was really hard. I would say it probably took me a good year to transition, but again, I think we take more or less time depending on our interpretations and our perceptions of things.
Couple of other suggestions. Cultivate a social life with other adults, particularly other single parents. And this means affirmatively and positively seeking out adult friendships. Don't be isolated going through a divorce or after one. Second, honor and exercise your own agency and judgment without excessive validation seeking. Okay, anyone else you're going to talk to, and that even includes your bishop or your marriage counselor, they're not going to have to live with the results of your decisions the way you are. And so you have to ultimately own that. And you may have been used to for years, checking everything for validation from your partner. Jump off that high dive. I mean, don't sit there and look off the edge. That's terrifying. But make decisions about your well-being, and you're not going to make the right ones or the best ones all the time, but make decisions, exercise your agency, and your agency extends to what thoughts you're going to choose to keep, as we've been talking about. Spiritual, emotional, and financial self-care are all important. You're not going to feel like paying your tithing, pay it. You're not going to feel like paying your taxes, pay them. You're not going to feel like going to work, go to work. You're not going to feel like going to the gym, go to the gym. I mean, I decided after my son Henry was killed that I was going to approach it with strength, because I had seen approaching tragedy, personal tragedy, with weakness in myself. And it lasted 4.5 years and nearly destroyed my life.
And he's been
And-
amazing. He's gone to the gym every single day for emotional health.
Right. And I need that for mood management. And you know what? I never feel like going over there when I do, but you want to make a decision, and then don't stop to second guess it. Don't try to convince yourself, or you'll talk yourself out of it.
Mhm.
Put your shoes on and go to the gym. And that's going to help you manage your moods better. If you have real issues with your moods, and a lot of divorcees do, there's also no shame in seeking some medical help.
Oh, for sure. So moving on to honoring the divine masculine and feminine. Why is that important, Jeff?
Well, it's important because God created us different. And it's very tempting when we've been hurt by our partner of the opposite sex to then start to demonize all women. And, anytime something comes up about a woman, you see guys roll their eyes, or women in reverse that are just man haters. And we need to begin to realize that men and women have different gifts, some overlapping. But I want to read something kind of interesting. I really like Don Miguel Ruiz. He's a surgeon and he's also a Toltec shaman. But he's written some really insightful stuff. But in one of his books, he talks about how the earth is feminine, the sun is masculine. The sun sends its rays and they fertilize the earth. They bring forth life on the earth, and they interact with what's already here in the earth to bring forth life. And it's interesting. It sounds a little woo-woo, but Joseph Smith talked about the sun, the earth, and the moon the same way. Doctrine and Covenants 88:45, the earth rolls upon her wings, and the sun giveth his light by day, and the moon giveth her light by night. The moon doesn't have what it takes to bring forth life, no matter what the sun does. But the earth does have that, and the sun and the earth can work together to bring forth life. And the stars, they give their light as they roll upon their wings in their glory in the midst of the power of God. Now, I think that is not only something we can look to in the heavens and marvel at. It's a metaphor for us as human beings. We can bring forth life as male and female, right? We have the capacity in us. And I think that that's more than just in sexual reproduction. We have the ability to bring light into the world together. That's what we're trying to do tonight, is to help some of that hope come back into your heart and some of that life be breathed back into it. And so it's important to not get overly irritated and stereotyping of the opposite sex, because that's going to keep you single, even if you want to be married.
Right. And whenever you hate on or have lots of negative thoughts about the opposite sex, you're basically in trouble with half the world's population, and it just kind of makes life difficult. So
Yeah.
it's something that we want to help you see things more and more balanced perspective, because I think often we get out of balance with our perspective when we've had a really rough breakup of some kind.
What is ultimately your destiny? Many, if not most of you in this audience, were anointed to become kings and queens in sacred places. And that's your ultimate destiny. To fully live that destiny out, every king needs a queen, every queen needs a king. But that is your ultimate destiny. That is your glory. And that's what we're here on earth to claim. So honoring the opposite sex and their femininity or masculinity is important, even though there is a temptation, if you've been hurt, to blame the whole opposite sex.
And it is a much more pleasant way to live when you are at peace. Well, and just recognizing that we're all human. We're just all human beings moving through life.
Right. We've already talked about peace, but there's a couple of little things to touch on.
Well, and in particular, we're talking about establishing peace in your own self and remembering that you are whole. Like, you might feel broken, but you actually are whole. And it's really a remembering rather than a creation.
Right. Right. It's remembering your divine heritage and your divine creation. And Latter-day Saints are unique in that we see ourselves as gods in embryo, and as fundamentally, inherently divine. Establishing peace also involves forgiveness. And if you think about it, forgiveness is just letting go. And so many people, well, but he or she did this or that to me, and I'm so hurt by it, and who should have to let that go? Well, nobody has to. It's a matter of agency. But you don't forgive someone because they deserve it, because if they deserved it, you wouldn't have anything to forgive. And so you forgive partly because it helps you. Now, letting go, what do I have to do if I'm holding a bowling ball in my hand or a helium balloon? Either way, one's going to go up and the other's going to go down, but I release my grip. I release my grip on it. What is harder, carrying around that rock or dropping it? It is easier to drop it, to let it go. So why do we find forgiveness so difficult to do? In a word, it's simply because it serves us in some way, or we think it does. It gives us some meaning to our marriage if we really are the person that was wronged. At least we're in the right. And so that's important to understand, that it's a hollow victory to be in the right and to have everybody else see what a dirtbag your spouse was. All right. There was a time where my former wife and I were talking to our son's therapist, and she started doing something that I kind of thought was manipulative. And that was my judgment. I'm not, extending that to her at this moment, but that was the way I felt at the time. And I felt this sort of rage rising up in me. And I thought, I told my own therapist, I thought I'd forgiven her. And then this happened, and all it took was a few words from her, and I feel this anger rising up in me. And I could feel myself picking up that rock. And she said, well, it's good that you understand that that's what was happening, because then you can intelligently, intentionally set it back down. And it occurred to me in that moment, that's what it means to forgive 70 times 7. New things may come up, and we've got to just continue to put down the rock, because carrying it around cankers your soul, and it makes you a bitter person. And that's not what God wants for you, and it's certainly not what we want for you.
Right. And I think we're making good progress and we're finishing up, but we probably could use another 10 minutes. Are you guys okay if we go just a little longer?
Yeah, we want to make sure we deliver great value. And if that means taking a little more time, then we're willing to do that. Getting comfortable being real and vulnerable. Kathy has some big thoughts on this.
Well, actually, I've been pondering the word vulnerable because it got brought up in a meeting last night. And so, I think it's an interesting word. And I think it's a word that most divorcees don't really want anytime soon after divorce. You don't want to be vulnerable again. You just got your heart stomped on, or, you feel like it's just too hard.
I mean,
Um,
one of the most common questions we get, and I get this a ton from men, but women too. How can I be sure that next time the same thing isn't going to happen to me again? And I don't think anybody likes this answer, but you can be sure of very little. And becoming comfortable with the uncertainty is something you have to do to become a happy person. And but yeah, there are things you can do to like reduce the risk a little bit.
Yeah.
But you can't make sure.
There
You
is
just
going to
can't.
be risk in every relationship, even in ours. I mean, we think we're pretty solid, but that doesn't mean we're guaranteed the other person will continue choosing us. Like, there's just no guarantee. But we can, yes, we can reduce the risk. We can't prevent it entirely, but we can learn what to watch for in wise people who will love us as we are and allow us to show up authentically and be accepted.
Right. Yeah, and so that's an important thing. And I'm going to tell you again, another uncomfortable truth, I guess, for some. Being vulnerable is the way you create connection. There's a lot of people that come to us in one form or another, wanting us to give them the moves. Well, my girlfriend did this, that, and the other thing. What does that mean? Do I look clairvoyant? You know, I mean,
There's plenty of coaches
There's-
who do teach moves, and that's not us.
right.
We like to move to truth and getting you into a really good space to attract the very best kind of people.
Let's suppose that I could give you the moves and it worked. And you could go and use that on the people you date and make them fall in love with you. Okay, I would have done you a huge disservice. You want to know why? The reason I would have done you a huge disservice by doing that is because I've taught you how to pretend, how to be a dating chameleon so that you just adapt to whoever it is you fancy at the time, and they fall in love with the mask you're wearing and
Yeah.
not the real
The
you.
worst thing that can happen is that it works.
Right. And so what we're telling you is the best dating strategy there is, and it doesn't work every time, but the best dating strategy there is honesty and vulnerability. And, you know, I've had more than one conversation with a dating partner where, you know, we were both pretty healed even, but we got into a conversation about our divorces and we both got teary. Okay, that creates a little bond together. And it does, you know, doesn't mean it always results in marriage, but being able to show emotion, being able to express the pain you have felt, being able to express why you're hurting right now. And, you know, Brené Brown talks about how women are not used to doing that with men. There was
And
this,
all of us can bring our safety to the relationship. And that safety is that safe place for them to express and be accepted.
Brené Brown talks about a guy who told her, my wife and my daughters would rather see me die on my white horse than watch me fall down. And that's a little bit melodramatic, but that is the way a lot of women think of men. And she says, if I see a woman, if you show me a woman who can sit with a man in real vulnerability and pain and not become insecure herself, I will show you a woman who's done incredible work. And I'm going to challenge the women in this group, do incredible work. Learn to see vulnerability in both women and men as strength. What's harder, to be the macho, you know, what takes more strength, being the macho man who brags about himself all the time, or being the guy who can say, yeah, I got really hurt? Which is more, you know, which is more brave? It's more brave to be vulnerable. And vulnerability ultimately is the way you're going to create connection. It's the seed of love that you're going to plant in that other person's heart. And so that's your best dating strategy. All right.
Last of the 6.
Creating an abundant mindset. Kathy, what's abundance?
Well, it's not just money. it's everything in life, and it's plentiful. It's plentiful, a plentiful way of thinking. It's like, actually, do you mind me being a little vulnerable with
You-
the audience?
Yeah,
Or,
go ahead.
like, even if it's about us? Okay.
Sure.
So right before this, Jeff spent an hour on a PowerPoint presentation we couldn't get to work for you. And I am so grateful that I was in a fairly good headspace. I'm not always, but I was. And I was able to say, you know what? Then I guess that wasn't meant to be. It'll be fine. We've got our talking points. It is all good. And I think it has turned out really wonderful. But that's like the abundant kind of mindset where it's like, whatever goes wrong, it's like, okay, I guess it's meant to be a different way, and we're good. It's all right.
Right. And, you know, sometimes God opens a door for us where another door has been closed, and we think, I see it. I see the miracle. And then that door closes. And I think we just trust that ultimately, as it says in Romans 8, all things work together for good to them that love God. This is not prosperity evangelism. I'm not promising you riches or dating supermodels or anything like that. I'm saying that the quality of your life is going to largely determine the happiness of your life. And that's, you know, that ultimately when we go through trials in this life or the next, God is going to restore everything we've lost tenfold. Like Job, it said at the end of the book of Job that God gave Job twice as much as he had before. And I think that's something that all of us that have lost a lot can take hope in. There's another thing I want to say in here about the law of the harvest. Now, I've heard one very successful business coach say, I do not believe in the law of attraction. The law of attraction is basically what you focus on, you get more of. And she says, I don't believe in it because it cheats the law of the harvest. And then Carol Tuttle, who's another person we read, says, the law of attraction, this is the law of the harvest. So one of them sees the law of attraction as opposite to the law of the harvest, and the other sees it as the same thing.
I think
And-
you adopted more the thought that they're the same.
Yeah, I mean, I think if your version of the law of attraction is I can make a vision board and put it up on my wall, and all of a sudden all these things are going to come flowing into my life without any effort at all on my part, then yeah, that cheats the law of the harvest. But here's the law of the harvest, that which a man soweth, that shall he also reap, right? I used to think that means you get out of it what you put into it. That doesn't really make sense if you think about it. If I
No,
get
in fact, we have that on the board at our gym, and I hate it. I just was like, no, not true, because not everybody gets the same results from the gym, even if you put in the exact same effort. But you are going to get some results from the effort you put in for those results.
right, and let's suppose in terms of the volume or the amount of effort, let's suppose I say to Kathy, do you have $1 in your purse? Yeah, I do. Okay, I got $1 in my wallet. I'll buy your $1 for my $1. I'm getting out of that transaction what I put into it, but it makes no sense, right? Neither one of us is any better off. Okay, you are going to reap what you sow. It's literally true. If
you plant corn, you're going to get corn.
yeah, you're not going to get potatoes or something, but the volume can be affected by a whole lot of things, right? It can be affected by a flood, a drought, a blight, pest infestation, whatever, that can take part of your crop, take part of your profit, if you will. But it's also a law of multiplication. So one kernel of corn, for example, can grow into a corn stalk. Every corn stalk has, on the average, 2 ears. And those ears on the average have 800 kernels each. So one little kernel of corn can multiply itself 1,600 times. I mean, ponder that a little bit. So for your effort in planting one kernel of corn, you get 1,600 kernels of corn. Now, some of those might be wiped out by a blight or a drought or a pest infestation or something else. you might lose your whole crop sometime. But ultimately, the law of multiplication is going to have its way if you don't give up planting, because you're going to have some good seasons. You're going to have some joy and happiness. You're going to meet an amazing person like I did and get married.
And it might not work out right when you like meet. It might not be love at first sight. You might not go get married right away. In fact, we were in and out for a long time. For anyone, yeah, who's read Intentional Courtship, the last chapter is all about our love story. And just for fun, I throw it out there that Jeff did research on like what, how many pages of text did you go through?
1,300 or something like that.
Pages of texts between us to write the chapter and be able to quote ourselves. So it's really fun. It's a fun read, and we kind of go back and forth and kind of give our own take on how things transpired.
And some of those texts were a little tense. I mean, we had our ups and downs as you know, as we it wasn't all hearts and flowers from day one. You know, we had a journey to go on, but it was our journey. And I want to promise you here. Okay, like Michael Jordan said, I think you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Keep taking your shots. Keep planting that seed. It only needs to grow once. And we're not just talking about dating, but about everything that brings you joy post-divorce. Friendships, career opportunities, creative opportunities. You know, if you always wanted to take dance and you never could because your husband or wife didn't support it, act in a community play. I mean, anything that you find fulfilling, you don't have to check it out with anybody right now while you're single. Go do it.
Yeah, and to go along with that thought, I recently heard that go beyond the idea that when one door closes, another opens. No, I think when one door closes, you've got a whole bunch of doors open to you, and you can hold space to walk through some later and walk through, you know, the ones that seem most fitting for you right now. And that's another thing with the abundant mindset is that, no, we don't just have one option. We've got lots of options.
Right. And I can honestly tell you, in terms of dating, which is, we hope this ends up that way for you, that you end up finding somebody that you are really happy with. But, you know, I dated a lot of women while I was a single guy, and dating was easier for me in my 40s than in my 20s because I was more comfortable in my own skin by then. And I didn't have as many fears. Rejection didn't bother me as much when it happened, and it didn't happen all that often. So I got to experience a lot of great women. Some of them were divorced, some were widowed, a few were not yet married, and a couple of them have gotten married since. And I can look back on those experiences, almost all of them were really positive. I met some really great people, and some of them have remained friends. I mean, but I didn't choose all of them. I couldn't. I could choose one, right? And so what's the moral of that story? Well, you go shoe shopping and you need one pair of shoes, but how many high quality pair do you find in the shoe store? Lots. How many do you try on and think, oh, I wish they had this in my size, but this pinches my foot? Does it mean it's not a good quality shoe? No, it's good quality. It's just the wrong size for you. It's the wrong fit.
Well, that moves in more into the dating, which isn't really what we're covering here. But I think the idea is that
that's part of your abundance.
Well, yeah. And the abundance would be, okay, not everything in the store works for me, but there's enough work for me. And really, it only ever takes one in the dating arena. And so if you just keep that in mind, then you know eventually you'll get there if you keep up the effort.
Right.
Yeah.
I hate dating is a common phrase used in the mid-single world. I encourage you to
love it instead.
Yeah. Let that one drop, because ultimately, if you keep telling yourself you hate it, that's going to come across to your partners. They're not they're going to track that. They're not going to want to be around somebody who's hating the time they're spending together.
Yeah.
So,
But if you see it as a gift to get to know people, even if it doesn't turn into something, or even if you get disappointed and you don't both choose in, it's really quite wonderful to be able to get to know new people. We learn a lot from everyone we meet. We
Right.
can, or at least there's that potential.
right. So, we've talked a lot. We've talked about, keeping fear out of the driver's seat in our life. We've talked about, getting past and overcoming or thriving beyond the divorce challenges, honoring the opposite sex as divine, establishing peace and remembering your wholeness. And then beyond that peace, being vulnerable and real, so that you can love and be loved in a way that's sincere and that you can really believe in. And then
To create
creating an abundant mindset so that you can look at this world that is so full of opportunities for you. And it's starting over at midlife might feel like a real burden, as it did to me for 4.5 years. But depends on how you look at it. An opportunity to start over with all the knowledge you gained over the last, 15, 20, whatever years, might be a gift. It might be an opportunity to start over and get it right and do it right this time. So think about that, ponder it. You probably never thought you were going to get a chance to fall in love again.
Yeah, and thanks so much for being here. We're not ending yet. I had mentioned towards the beginning, for those of you that trickled in a little later, that we've got like about 5 minutes worth of announcements. We have a fun new product we're going to share with you that no one else knows about. You're going to find out the secret first. It's been something we've been working on for a long time. So we're going to just share that for about 5 minutes, and then we're going to open it up for Q&A and discussion. And we really would love to meet with you, face to face. And at that point, we'll turn your microphones on and we'll turn your cameras on. So get ready for that. So here's our announcement. Are you guys ready for it? All right. Actually, can you turn on your cameras so we can see you? Is that possible for any of you?
There's
Yay.
Christy.
Hey, Christy. Let's see. Yeah, whoever can turn their cameras on would be great. Okay, so here is the fun thing we're launching tonight. So a brand new opportunity for love in later years. We're pleased to announce that we have expanded the principles we've talked with you tonight about and created a 12-week course. And it's going to be coaching, workshops, assignments, integration assignments in particular, to help you to make use of all of this and really establish it in your life. It's going to help you dive deeper and into what you've learned tonight and so much more. I mean, we really were challenged to pare it down into what we've shared with you tonight. We have a lot more.
We hope you've gotten, 1 or 2 nuggets out of what we've talked about that really feel transforming. But we also know that sometimes the excitement of the moment dissipates. You go to sleep, you get up the next day, you start doing the same things as before. And it's easy, if we haven't really digested and internalized it, to to lose focus again.
It takes time and effort and consistency to get a mindset shift and to be able to make these changes that you probably want to make to live a more joyful life with less fear and with more confidence. So in this 12-week course, we're going to be doing 6 live 90-minute workshops and coaching sessions. And then on the alternating weeks, we're going to do content and integration assignments that will be due the next time we meet, but it will give you time to do it. And then this is really exciting. This is exclusive only for our course participants. We're going to have the first 8 chapters of Intentional Courtship on audio recording with our own voices, and they are professional quality and they're really good. And it won't be available in audiobook for sale online until at least next fall. So you guys will be the only ones that have access to it. And because we're going to be like expanding on those first 8 chapters, that's why we felt it was important to provide those. And it's kind of fun. I turn them into videos so that you can actually listen to them and like just see the front cover, and you'll know what chapter you're on. And it's not like a music video or anything. There's not like live action. It's just an image, but and you can pretty much listen on the go. Like you'll just be on the website logged into the course. And then we might not be offering this part for everyone forever, but for now, while we're just getting this launched, for everyone who signs up tonight, you'll get a free 30-minute private coaching session with me or Jeff, and a free 90-minute group coaching session with either the Lily Ladies, if you're a woman, or the Knights of the Lily, if you're men. And if you happen to already be in those groups, you get a free month. So it's kind of like an automatic discount there for you.
Right.
So, and then with the course, of course, you will gain all the tools and a lot of the support and mentoring that you need to be able to establish the banishment of fear from running your life, thriving beyond divorce challenges, honoring the divine masculine and feminine, establishing peace and remembering your wholeness, getting comfortable being real and vulnerable, and creating abundance and enjoy a well-lived life. Jeff's going to go ahead and bring up the, can we bring up that as a screen share? We love you, and we hope that you'll join us in this 12-week journey, or 12-week journey, and allow us to love and serve you even more. We have figured out that if we were to create this course for just one person, the content and like the time with us and the worth of the material is like $3,000, and also the coaching. But we're going to be charging a whole lot less than that. Do you want to go ahead and bring it up? Wait, are you guys seeing a screen?
You guys seeing the
It's
screen
probably
share?
not the right screen.
No, I think it is.
Is it? Do you guys see Life Design After Divorce? Oh, good. Okay, cool. He's got many monitors here. I don't know how he keeps track of them. But anyway, are you able to scroll down, Jeff?
Yeah.
Okay, don't scroll down just yet. Well, yeah, I guess let's go ahead and scroll down. And oh gosh, why is it showing it? Okay, they're supposed to be in order form, and it's not showing up on phones. And I wonder if this is like a phone view or something, because it showed up on my computer, but it's not showing up on his. Okay.
Here it is.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Sorry, I
so
just had to refresh it.
there we go. That's the price of our course. So we've taken it all the way down from like, we want to give you at least $3,000 worth of value in this course over the next 12 weeks. And give it to you for only $297. And we really want to be able to dive deep with you. And when I say we love you, like we haven't known you all that long, but we have been preparing for this for a long time, and you're here, and we're so grateful. And we're going to open it up for Q&A in just a moment. But I also wanted to let you know that, with this course and, getting you living less in fear and more in joy, and being ready to start dating if you want to, and attracting good people into your life, you're going to be ready to move into the last 12 chapters of Intentional Courtship and start learning how to court with confidence. This is kind of the prerequisite for that journey. And we would like, so for whoever gets on board with us and takes the course, we're going to start a private Facebook group. And what we hope is that one day in the near future, not too distant really, that you will be in a position to offer hope and loving counsel to those who are starting down this path of recovery that you will be on for the next 12 weeks, so that you can pay it back. And this will be a loving place that we all warmly welcome those who want to recover faster and with more support than has ever been available before. And you can be part of this like green or this grassroots movement. Like we're trying to make it like this. Anyway, so go to lilywebinars.com order page if you're interested, and we're going to go ahead and get we're going to end the recording. How do we end the recording?
Gotta stop the screen share first.
Okay.